What's good, Voodoom fans? I'm back from my decade-long Zach slumber, and I'm ready to get started on the game. Last video, I set up the models and environment, but this video is going to be about combat. Combat is a really big part of my game, so I need to make sure that it's both satisfying and fun. But before we can get combat set up, we need enemies, and that's why I need to get multiplayer set up for the game. Doing a little bit of research, I found Fishnet, a free networking library that integrates directly with Unity. It was very easy to set up, and I just followed a quick YouTube tutorial to get lobbies and multiplayer sessions working. But let's talk about developing multiplayer for a second. It sucks. It basically doubles your development time, because for every new mechanic you add, you need to make sure that it works for multiple players. One example would be animations. If I just set up my player animations normally, it would work on your screen, but all other players watching you would just see your character standing with no animations. The way to fix pretty much all of these problems is through remote procedure calls, or RPCs. Basically, these are special functions that you can use to run on specific players' instances of the game. Server RPC runs only on the host, Observer's RPC runs on all players, and Target RPC will run on a player of your choosing. To fix the animation problems, I set up some general RPC functions to make sure that animations are played on all players' machines. I showed it off briefly in my last video, but I also gave dolls the ability to jump. Different games handle jumps differently, and it is one of the most important factors in how movement feels. Some games allow you to steer completely midair, while others lock your trajectory. Personally, I'm a big fan of giving players control midair, but I also planned on having the dolls wind up and throw items, so I wanted them to keep their trajectory when jumping. To balance it out, the dolls mainly follow their jump direction, but I added some weaker directional control midair. It gives a nice middle ground between fixed and adjustable jumps. So once I had the basics for multiplayer and movement working, I made a plan for combat. Each player, whether a doll or a monster, would have a basic attack, a secondary attack, and a utility move. For basic attacks, the dolls throw little sewing needles, while the monster does a simple swipe. The monster's secondary attack is a grab, which lets it grab and separate a doll from the group. I took some inspiration from this Lethal Company video. Give me him back! Give him back! And I think this grab will create the same kind of funny, scary moments. The doll's secondary attack is more flexible. Dolls can pick up throwable items around the map and use it to create different effects. I'll go into more on that later. Lastly, the utility move will be customizable, and players can select them before starting the game. That'll allow players to create unique builds that suit their playstyle. Real quick, if you've enjoyed this video so far, feel free to give it a like, and it would be super helpful if you could click the link in the description and wishlist Voodoom on Steam. It's free and is super helpful in getting my game in the spotlight when I eventually release it. Thanks, and back to the video. So first, I worked on throwing needles. I started by creating a wind up and throw animation, and although this was the first time I've ever made a 3D animation from scratch, I'm happy with how they've turned out. Then, I simply made a needle spawn in the player's hand at the start of the wind-up animation, and used an animation trigger to throw the needle near the end of the throw animation. It also took a while syncing the throw between different players, but I'm pretty happy with how it looks in the end. After that, I set up items. They spawn in the side rooms that branch off of the hallways, but since those are currently empty, I made random rooms spawn using reused assets, which I plan to replace later. Inside, I created passive items and throwable items. Passive items increase stats such as damage or health, and throwables are single-use items that are thrown with the doll's secondary ability. I made the mason jars with effects like wind for knockback, lightning for stun, snowflake for slow, and a leaf for splash healing. I plan to add more, like maybe a light source in the future. Since now, the dolls have to throw both needles and other items, I needed to generalize the throwing system. I created a simple inventory bar, and depending on which button you press, either a stored needle or your selected item is loaded into the doll's hand, and the throw animation triggers its release. This makes things easy for adding new items now. I just need to spawn it in the environment, and the dolls can pick it up and throw it as a projectile. I also created a versatile Hitbox script. You can throw this on any Hitbox and specify the target, damage, knockback, effects, and other values. This makes hit detection pretty simple for adding new features. since I just need to add this script, set the properties, and then call it to specify when the hitbox is active and inactive. For monster attacks, I tested out different styles based on some of the games that I've played. First, I tried telegraphed hits, but these were way too easy for dolls to dodge. I then tried Fortnite-style attacks, where the monster moves forward slightly when attacking and then comes to a stop. But this still felt unsatisfying when chasing a moving target, so I needed something else. After a bit of experimenting, the approach that worked best was allowing the monster to attack while moving. This makes chasing and attacking feel natural, but it gave rise to a new problem. Monsters could chase down dolls, repeatedly hitting them, without the dolls being able to escape. To prevent this, I took a page out of Dead by Daylight's book, and I made it so dolls get a speed boost after taking a hit from the monster. I think this will give a fun cat and mouse sort of effect to the combat, where the dolls are constantly making distance and the monsters have to catch up. For the monster's grab and throw ability, I also made the animation from scratch. Differing from the basic attack, this move is stationary and somewhat telegraphed. I see it as kind of a high risk, high reward ability. If the monster manages to land a grab on a doll, it can carry them for a short distance and then throw them, dealing extra damage if it throws them into a wall or furniture. This helps separate dolls from each other and adds to the horror element. Lastly, I added one utility move to each player. I gave the dolls a roll, allowing them to dodge attacks and gain distance. If they use it in the air, it becomes a dive, giving a bit more distance but not granting invincibility like the roll. For the monster, I added a simple blink ability, allowing it to do a very short dash. This will be good as general mobility, but I also made you able to use it during other animations, meaning it could also be a good tool to reposition and land a grab you otherwise would have missed. This concludes the foundation of the combat for Voodoom. I was also planning to add more responsiveness to the hits, like sound effects or visual feedback, but it's already been so long since I last uploaded that I decided to just cut it off there. Next, I plan on adding more content to the already existing gameplay, like adding more items, furniture, or customizable characters. If you haven't already, it would be super helpful for you to wishlist Voodoom on Steam. Hopefully I can get this next video out without another year-long wait. Thanks for watching.